We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupaluni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupaluni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one can rise, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people, struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when out
I would like to ask you to introduce your team. I see you have a very big team this morning, so we're likely going to finish fast. Yeah, so please introduce your team.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Prema Romano Rupnarayan, PS of Ministry of Local Government. I have with me PS Andre Ali, and he has his team, which he will introduce from Ministry for Housing and Water. On my left, I have Ms. Dacia. She's my internal auditor. Mr. Gills, in charge of he's a technical advisor for sanitation. He was in charge of sanitation back then. Ms. Jarvis is the chief accountant, acting PAS Finance at Ministry of Local Government. Way over there, I have Mr. Hamid from Local Government Commission. I have the city treasurer, Ms. San Mogan. She was employed on the 11th of April, so she's pretty new. Ms. Keisha is the ministry's SPO, acting. I have Mr. Narayan, the Director of Solid Waste, City Hall. My DPS, Ms. Ellis. Mr. Satro, from Director of Sanitation from Local Government. Ms. Candace, Town Clerk, City Hall. Mr. Douglas, he acted as the treasurer at City Hall part of this period. He is now the accounting manager at City Hall. And I will hand over to PS.
Before you do so, what is Mr. Hamid's position at local government? Or you said you have him as local government. What's his position?
Oh, sorry, he's the finance manager.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Morning, honorable members. My name is Andre Ali, Permanent Secretary, Housing and Water, and I'll continue in the same order. So the gentleman in the blue is Mr. Nigel Niles, Company Secretary, GWI. Next to him is Arshad Yaqub, he's current program manager at GWI, and he was the head of the WISIP program in 2017. To his right is Mr. Ramchan Jailal. He is currently the director of the Hinterland program. Back in 2017, he was the director of projects. To his right is Mr. Mark David, director of finance, GWI. To his right, Reyaz Ibrahim, director of finance, CHPA.
Also, Chair, I'm not sure if we have Mr. Magarel, previous PS, if he's online. And also, we have also invited Mr. McCalman, the treasurer for City Hall during that period. However, he indicated that he might not be able to join us. Ms. Miller, who is also partly the treasurer at City Hall, is also supposed to be online.
Okay, yes, thank you, PS. The link was sent to Mr. McGarry. I haven't noticed him online as yet. But before we proceed, we have taken a position at the Public Accounts Committee to remind all accounting officers and their accompanying team of Chapter 108 of the Legislative Body of Evidence Act, which I very much confident that you're aware, but if in case you've forgotten and your team, let me remind you. It states every person examined under this act who willfully gives false evidence shall be guilty of perjury. That is specifically put to all accounting officers and team to remind them of their legal responsibility to provide truthful, honest, accurate information to the Public Accounts Committee. We do not need any expressed opinion or political statements. All we need is factual, honest answers. If you are not in a position at the time when the question is posed by any member of the Public Accounts Committee, ask for time and time will be provided, especially if you don't have the information at hand or any of your staff at the present time cannot help you in providing the answer, and we will give you the time because we need the committee to be furnished with accurate, truthful information so that we can ensure transparency and accountability is the hallmark of all of the agencies that comes before us. With that said, members, we have a number of paragraphs this morning for the ministry. In the year 2017, we have 51 paragraphs. And for the year 2018, we have 50 paragraphs for our consideration. I put paragraphs 479 to 494 for 2017. And I put paragraphs 608 to 623 for the year 2018. The floor is open for all members.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Member Edger.
Two things, sir. I indicated earlier that I have to leave the meeting at a particular time. I know we had an extended break, so I will have to leave shortly. And secondly, in the earlier part of the meeting, when I reported on the issue of the absence of the Region 9 REO, a request was made that it be put on the record from the permanent secretary, and I'm surprised that we're going ahead and we haven't dealt with that.
No, we're going ahead because one, I said that the issue will be put by members of the committee. I just said the paragraphs that are available, and I put the paragraphs. But moreover, it doesn't negate any member from raising the issue. So Mr. Mai Paul had indicated to me before you had your mic on first, so that's why I allowed you. But Mr. Mai Paul had indicated to me that he would like to raise the issue. So it's not that we are not going to address the issue. You had your mic on first, that's why you get it.
Since I'm on the floor, I will raise the issue so it could be addressed before I depart.
I was going to yield to you too.
Yes, go ahead.
Earlier today, Mr. Chairman, there was some concerns expressed about the late notice that the permanent secretary provided to the PSC concerning the absence of the REO team from Region 9. I indicated to the committee that I made contact with the permanent secretary, the REO, and reported. Could the permanent secretary explain to the committee when she was aware that Region 9 was unable to attend, that she only offered an email last night, late, and if Region 9 had any intention at all, that she's aware of attending today.
Yes, Ario. The express view of some members of the Public Accounts Committee earlier, was that we found the letter at such late notice as a form of disrespect to the Public Accounts Committee, given the fact that this agency would have made several appearances and more so notices for their attendance was given to them weeks in advance. And at the very late hour, more so while we came here this morning, we were made aware that such a letter penned by you was sent last night, informing the committee that the region would be unable to make an appearance. So, including myself, consider that to be some form of disrespect to the Public Accounts Committee. Several views were articulated, and as the member would have indicated, he made contact with you and he communicated the same. But I would like to provide you an opportunity to basically explain to the committee what would have transpired, to nullify that view some members shared, including me. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, firstly, please accept my apologies for giving that impression. REO was spent the entire day in Deep South yesterday addressing the flood, and upon his return when he gained cellular services at 9:30 last night, he called me and he indicated that, as you know, he always make all advance to get here for the last 2 times that he came here. So with all intention, he was expecting to be here. However, when he came out last night, because of the severity of the flood in Region 9, he indicated he will not be able to make it today. Within the hour, I dispatched that email to the clerk indicating that and requesting a deferral on his behalf. So again, I am sincerely sorry for you getting that, but that is very far from the truth, sir.
Thank you, PS. And we wish that the region would definitely come to grips with this unfortunate reality that they're experiencing. Region 10 is experiencing similar occurrence with regards to flooding. And I trust that every effort will be put in place to ensure that their safety, the livestock and property would be preserved. And if it is damaged, assistance will be provided, adequate assistance. With that said, members, I would have put the paragraphs and the floor is open to our members to ask questions. Go ahead. Member Siraj, you have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2017, Mr. Chairman, 479 and 481. I think the corresponding paragraphs for 2018 will be 608 to 611. Mr. Chairman, I noted a high percentage of total employees at the ministry, and I would be putting it at 42% of employees at the ministry, based on my briefing note here, being contracted employees. Can the Permanent Secretary inform PSC why such a huge percentage of all employees are or work on a contractual basis at the ministry?
Go ahead, sir, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, as to why we had so high amount of contracted employee, Mr. Magaro can probably indicate that. However, my research indicate I can give you a breakdown who they were. During the time, we had, I can lay it over as well, sir. I have the list and the names, the list of names of persons.
Well, you don't have to read them out. You can lay it over.
Okay, but from the set, we have inherited 13 of these persons from that were not qualified, but we got them from Ministry of Presidency. They're no longer there. 2 bonded students, and we had 26 persons on the Ministerial Secretariat. Most of them are not there. I believe from the list, only 9 remain with us. 3 of them are over the age. of 45. 7 of them remain. 3 are over 45. 3 are unpensionable now, and 1 is because of Public Service Commission not being in place. We are waiting on that. As I indicated, I can lay them over if required.
Please do. Member Maipoyod.
Thank you, Chair. PS, you gave a figure of the total in 2017. Can you repeat that figure?
The total was 7 to 1, I think.
No, you gotta be certain.
Let me just get the report, sir. 7 to, how many people is this?
71%.
It's 7 to 1 employees, paragraph 480. However, my ministry can only account for 67 of those persons. We're still trying to reconcile the other 4.
How many you were 69, you said?
We found 67.
No, but this was a ministry that had GWI and local government and regional
Housing.
development and housing.
Yes.
So this 169 that is said here for 2017, that is with all 3 GWI,
Yes.
GWI,
The
housing,
total.
and good. So from that total there of 169, you are accounting for 67. Housing and water. Water is in cooperation.
Oh, yes. Housing and water, they were semi-autonomous, I believe, and they were counted separately. PS Ali can.
Yes, so Central Housing and Planning Authority and GWI, their staffing would be accounted separately since they're some semi-autonomous agencies. They would not fall under this.
Yeah, but the Ministerial Secretariat of Housing at that time in 2017, they will fall under this category, right? And but all of GWI will fall separately. So PS, out of this 169, according to the payroll for December 2017, so they were not on Minister Housing, CHNPA and Guyana were not on communities payroll.
That's correct, honorable member.
The ministry had a
GWI, Central Housing and Planning Authority, they're employed by those semi-autonomous agencies. They're counted directly
a
under
separate
the agency.
audit.
Yeah.
A total of 169 employees, of which contracted. No, this is the total employee PS.
Yes.
Total 169, of which contracted employees were 42% of the total employees. So 42% of your 169 is what you had. What was the number for that?
7 to 1 employee.
71 contracted.
Yes.
Right? That includes local government and regional development and the Ministerial Secretariat of Housing.
That includes the Minister, Secretariat, the PS department, all the other departments within Ministry of Communities.
So let's disaggregate it now. At local government and regional development, how many contracted employees were at the Ministry of Local Government or the Ministry of Communities with responsible local government and regional development from the 71?
I think we're a little confused. This entire 7 to 1 contracted employees belong to the Ministry of Community. They were working, some of them were working in the Minister's Secretariat, essentially at the
at 4th Street, Kingston.
Yes, that minister had responsibility for housing, water, everything. But his secretariat is head office. He had those staff were on Ministry of Communities payroll. They belong to Ministry of Communities. Then I said the PS also had some staff there and some other technical people.
But you had now a minister that was responsible for housing. And that minister had a secretariat at housing on Brickdam. And those staff are also on communities payroll, but were not directly placed at 4th Street, Kingston or Camp Street. So okay. I'm trying to disaggregate this 71 for you to tell me how many of these staff from the 71 were directly related to local government and regional development, and how many were directly related to housing and water?
Okay. Chair, with your
Go ahead,
permission,
Mr. Ali.
Yes, Chair. So at the current housing and water building, they previously housed two ministers within the ministry, right? One responsible for water and one responsible for housing. Or I might be incorrect with the one responsible for water, but nonetheless, all of the staff.
No, there was one minister there.
There's two.
The one minister was.
So there are two ministers within the Ministry of Communities,
At the
honorable
time.
member,
Yes.
at the time, right? And both at secretariats.
Right at
And
camp,
yes,
at Breakdown.
at Breakdown. So their secretariats will be a subset of this number as well.
Good. Well, exactly. So that's why I want to disaggregate the 71 to know specifically how many were at local government and regional development.
so, Mr. Chair, with your permission, if I can ask the Auditor General how they got the 71, perhaps they can shed some light now. If not, if they don't have that information, I will ask if I can lay over the information when I go back and do that segregation.
Okay, go ahead. Who's the individual answer?
Auditor General's office.
AG?
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, these matters were discussed before. If they follow the report, they will see there is an analysis on page 193 of my AG report, paragraph 480, and these would have we would have obtained it from the payroll at December. So I think what they need to do is do their homework properly.
Yes, you're so guided.
Thank you.
PS, with your permission, Chair, you said that right now you have 7 that would have remained from this 71. Correct?
I have 7 remaining from 67. I'm trying to locate the other 4 to get the 71. That's still a process. From the 67, 7 remain on contract.
Okay, so can you account to PAC what happened to the others, the 60? Let's use 60 because you're saying that 67 you can account for, and 7 is still with the ministry. The 60, can you account for them in terms of how many retired or how many were terminated or how many left?
I have here that they're no longer with the ministry. Their contract was came to an end. As to how I can't really say right now if they were retired or they left or how it happened. But they're no longer with the ministry.
Chair, I will appreciate if the PS can at least dig a little deeper and lay that information over to us in writing. And I am also cognizant of the fact that in 2018, you are seeing a reduction in the contracted employees, and I'm assuming that that is based on moving them from contracted employee onto the pensionable establishment.
Don't make those assumptions. Ask the question.
No, well, I'm saying that for the PS's knowledge, so that if that is it, then at least we can know how many of these 67 were transferred from contracted employee onto the pensionable establishment in keeping with the Public Service Commission Circular number 1 of 2017.
3 of the existing 67 was transferred to establishment, to pensionable establishment.
3.
The other 3 are over 45 and 1 person.
No, I'm not talking about the 7 that you have, the 7 that you have remaining, you know. Remember, this 7 that you're talking about here is for your 2022. Right now you have that 7.
Yes.
Of which 3 are pensionable, 3 are contracted because they're over 45, and the 1 for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I am talking about the reduction from 67 to 7. There's a number there, 60, right? So from this 60, I am asking if there are any that were transferred to the pensionable establishment, and if there are any that retired, or any that were terminated, or any that were whatever. What I would like for us to account for these 60.
Okay. I understand. I'm asking if that information can be laid over, sir.
Would a week be sufficient? Would 1 week be sufficient?
Yes, sir.
Are you sure? Thank you.
Yes.
Member Ziraj.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, 491 of 2017, the Auditor General note here, sir, that Cabinet granted its approval in November of 2017 for the grant of $475.635 million to the Georgetown Mayor and City Council. It is further noted here that the payments details at paragraph 492, the details of the payments, including the exact periods and descriptions through particulars of services and its related costs, were not provided. At 493, the Auditor General further noted that they were unable to verify accuracy, validity, and completeness of the sum of $475.6 million that were paid to the contractors. That some documents, end of quote, Mr. Chair, but that some documents were provided but sketchy at best. Can the accounting officer tell PAC if they have managed to locate records that will account for the payout of $475.6 million by the Mayor and City Council of Georgetown?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. If you can permit me, I would like to give a little background of the information that I was able to discover
In
in
relation to this particular question?
this matter,
Go
yes. So the Ministry of Community has these are all expenses incurred by City Hall. So I'm not sure Mr. McGarrell will put in some, wherever I've don't have information. We found a cabinet decision for $475 million to be pay out to these 3 contractors to the tune of $475 million. We have also found a warrant that was received from the Ministry of Finance for $400 million. Ministry of Communities cut those checks using the cabinet decision. We have since asked City Hall to provide a reconciliation how they have arrived at these figures. I know that the treasurer is trying to work to get the information. She has since asked for 2 weeks because it's not very forthcoming. We have also have a little update where the city treasurer managed and the town clerk managed to found some copies of some contracts relating to this, and they have shared those with the auditors who are looking at them. So we are making some headway as it relates to these payments. So in conclusion, Ministry of Communities made $475 million based on a cabinet decision that clearly outlined where and who to pay the 3 persons here. $400 million was released from Ministry of Finance. The ministry took the balance from their 6284 line. That's the information that I have. But up until now, we are having severe difficulties getting these documents to justify the breakdown of $475 million. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, given this was 2017 and 2018, my first question, the Permanent Secretary said that the Treasurer asked for 2 weeks. Are we saying 2 weeks henceforth or 2 weeks from when?
It's 2 weeks from Friday. I think it's the 6th. 2 weeks from Friday. That's why when Mr. Chairman asked if 1 week would be okay, I was taking that into consideration, that I might need 2 weeks.
Mr. Chairman,
Are you currently asking for an additional week?
Very nicely, sir.
Okay, 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Siraj.
Mr. Chairman, you're in a generous mood this morning. Mr. Chairman, this grant would have been given to the mayor and city council of Georgetown in 2017. We are now into 2022. Can the permanent secretary inform us if, while some amount of progress was made, I gather from the response that it was not much. Can we get any indication as to whether they're optimistic that this matter will be settled, whether information will be provided as to how the amount of $475.6 million were spent by the mayor and city council?
Mr. Chair, I thought that, thank you for the thing, but I thought that question could be held off until we get the response. If not, it will be a speculation, and I don't want, unless the permanent secretary has a definitive answer, I don't want her to, or her officers to give a misleading response.
Yes, would you agree with the member's proposition?
Mr. Chair, it is my opinion I will have to give you.
Well, we don't need your opinion. So we wait on the information.
So, but however, if I can add, I have requested, Mr. Douglas is working on this particular issue because he was there at that time, and I had asked him to do the reconciliation. Perhaps if he can give us an update and or a little bit insight if he believes it can be produced, because I've been having a lot of difficulty, sir, getting these documents. Maybe it can also guide the committee.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to restate my concern that someone that can give just an opinion, even if he's, I understand he's in process, the agency has asked for and you have agreed to allow 2 weeks to, for them to provide the information. I think that's more than enough. But if anyone will gonna give us any sort of opinion or statement, it shouldn't be on the record. At the conclusion of the 2 weeks, we can have a real factual matrix of what's going on, and then we can examine it. Just my concern. Let's want that on the record, sir.
That is duly noted, and I would have indicated from the outset that the committee will not be engaged in accepting any expressed opinion from accounting officers. All information must be factual, and if you cannot, time will be provided for you to get those information. So we do not need the PS or any member of our team putting forward their expressed opinion to this committee. All right? Member Siraj, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, I'm not looking for an opinion, but can Mr. Douglas give us an update on the investigation into the spending of this amount of money as of date, to date?
We would rather a wholesome report rather than a piecemeal response from Mr. Douglas. 2 weeks has been provided, and I trust that that would be sufficient for the wholesomeness of his report.
Mr. Chairman, if I can direct your attention to paragraphs 494 and 494 for 2017 and I'm not going ahead of you, Mr. Chairman.
No, you're not.
Right. And 616 for 2018. There's a relatively small amount of shortfall spending on capital expenditure for 2017. But Mr. Chairman, in 2018, the shortfall was $512.2 million. Can the PS tell PAC why the agency was unable to execute the capital program?
Go ahead, PS.
Mr. Chair, with your approval, I would like to ask my predecessor if he can address that query, please.
Mr. McGarrell, are you on? Is Mr. McGarrell online? PS McGarrell?
Yes, sir. Good day. I am very much here. Thank you very much.
PS, we not hearing you, sir.
Not hearing me?
No.
My mic is on.
Mr. Alonso, could you assist? 1 second, PS.
Yes, my volume is up.
Yes, we hear you now.
Hearing me now. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the PSC. And
Good afternoon, sir.
what I can only say, former colleagues of the Ministry of Communities and Public Service. That's the issue in relating to paragraph, and I need to paragraph, I think it's 617 and 6-9. What's the one for 2017? Mr. Chair,
494 for 2017. 616 for 2018.
I think the situation here is related to shortfall in projected or budgeted expenditure. I think this relates to, my memory goes correctly, this may relate to a CDB loan that the CDB loan which took some time to get finalized and approved. And when you went through the CDB, when you were at CDB's policy procurement procedure, I don't think in 2018 we had gotten to the point of awarding a contract. I think this is the issue, if I can remember correctly. But you do have officers who have from the particular agency who may be able to help. But from what I recall, the amount that was spent related to things of water supply project, and we were early in the stages of the project cycle and trying and securing the loan from CDB. Once that was done, I think in 2018, then you had a procurement procedure to follow, conditions to satisfy, and we didn't publish all of the 2020 in order to expend the resources that it.
Mr. Chairman, a significant amount, well, almost all of it, as it relates to 2018, would have fallen under the Water Supply Infrastructure and Infrastructure Improvement Program. Can the PS tell us if this component falls under GWI? And if it does, is there anyone from GWI who can give us further information as it relates to the unspent amount, in this particular case of $431.5 million?
Mr. Chair, we have with us the former project manager for this particular project from GWI. I'm asking with your permission if he can address.
Yes, please proceed, sir.
Mr. Yaku?
Yes, through the chair, the budgeted amount, we budgeted amount there, but we had to go through the tender process to obtain the contract. But what happened when we went through the tender process, there was no recommendation, so we had to relaunch the process for a second time. So the amount which was budgeted for that year hoping that the monies will be expended with the intention that the contract will be formed. It was unspent because of we have to relaunch the procurement process for a second time.
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, when the former PS, Mr. McGarrell, good morning, Mr. McGarrell, said CDB, I'm assuming he means the Caribbean Development Bank.
Yes.
And I'm also assuming that when him and the former PS, the gentleman just spoke just now, they're speaking about that the procurement process follows, even though it is in Guyana, we have to advertise locally and maybe even internationally. Then we have to get the responses. It has to get a no objection from both CDB and MPTAB before it can be awarded. So I just wanted to make clear that is the process in which that happened, and that is why there was a delay in expenditure.
Yes. Mr. Siraz, having posed this question in 2017 from the last paragraph I put paragraphs 494 to 509 for 2017 and paragraphs 223 to 638 for our consideration. 638.
Mr. Chairman, for 2017, it's 506 to 509, and for 2018, 633 on paragraph 634. I know the ministry would have responded to the queries raised by the Auditor General as it relates to coastal water supply. But can I ask, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, as it relates to the contractor's indebtedness of $1.45 million and $2.5 million in terms of 506 to 509, and outstanding deliveries, I suspect this would have been for GWI, outstanding deliveries for supplies paid for by contractors in the form of pumps and motors and other supply. What is the current situation as it relates to these paragraphs?
Go ahead, PS.
Mr. Chair, as the honorable member highlighted, it's a legal issue now, and I would ask Mr. Nigel Niles, the Corporate Secretary of GWI, if he can respond.
Good morning, Chair, members of the PSC.
Yes.
This matter had started in 2018 when we would have taken action on the performance bond. Those proceedings were not successful for GWI. The contractor would have submitted a claim after this contract was concluded for $19 million. Attempts were made to negotiate with the contractor on several occasions, and those attempts were not fruitful. This matter is still with the legal department, and the intention is to speak with the Attorney General for some advice on the matter going
You
forward.
still have the attention?
Yes, Chair.
That's still your intention?
Yes, Chair.
Why haven't you pursued it?
Because of the claim that was filed by the contractor, that was served on us, sorry, by the contractor, the attempt was not for GWI to face a counterclaim in court for 19 million when we were suing for 1.4. So we were trying to negotiate with the contractor to review the claim. As I said, those negotiations were not successful. And the intention right now is to discuss this matter a bit further with the Attorney General for some advice on his part.
I understand all of that, but my question still remains. Why you still have the intention when this thing is already before the court?
It's not currently before the court right now, Chair.
So when will this intention that you have materialize?
Well, I did reach out to the Attorney General, and he indicated that I should come.
Via letter?
No, via a conversation. And he indicated that I should come and see him this week. For the discussions, yes.
Okay. PSP will need a follow-up on that discussion.
Absolutely.
Members, I put all of the remaining paragraphs before this agency.
Mr. Chairman, 512 and 513 for 2017. The Auditor General noted here that under the Community Infrastructure Improvement Project, there is an unspent balance of $215 million. Can the accounting officer tell us what happened to this $215 million, $215.1 million?
Yes.
All right. This is the SIP program. So currently there's a bank account at the Ministry of Local Government that holds the SIP project funding. These funds, the bank account has been fully reconciled and the funds remain in the bank account. However, we are conducting a full reconciliation for each of these projects. There are a number, about 7 projects, which we are reconciling individually. And when that is completed, the next step will be taken.
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up, isn't it normal practice for unspent monies to be returned to the consolidated fund?
Go ahead, PS.
Mr. Chair, that is correct. That is the correct procedure. However, we have to do a full reconciliation of each project. So when we're handing it over, it will be properly accounted for.
Mr. Chair, can I ask the Accountant General if that is a normal procedure?
Yes. Ms. Chapman?
Yes, Chair. Based on the question from Member Patterson, it is not the normal procedure, but because given that the projects have been since 2017, I guess PS would have made that decision to ensure this reconciliation before that amount is transferred over to the consolidated fund. As she indicated that there are lots of 7 projects need to be reconciled before we can fully account for what is the amount that needs to be transferred to the consolidated fund.
Thank you, AG.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, 646 for 2018. The Auditor General noted here, Mr. Chairman, that the ministry would have transferred sums totaling $297.7 million to municipalities in 2018. However, the Auditor General also noted that municipalities continued to breach the Municipal and District Council Act in regards to submitting timely financial statement, among other things. Is the County Permanent Secretary tell PAC if the ministry is taking any action to bring municipalities up to date with requirement under the Municipal and District Councils Act, and specifically Chapter 2801, before they contemplate making more transfers to these municipalities? Is the ministry contemplating making it conditional that these defaulting municipalities bring their books up to date before transfers are made?
Go ahead, PS.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, according to the laws, the audit office has direct contact, a direct relationship with these municipalities. The Ministry of Local Government has written several letters to all municipalities encouraging them to bring their accounts up to date and submit for audit. We have also noted that there is an issue of capacity with training. We're implementing a comprehensive training program across the 10 municipalities to help them in whatever area they need to get these accounts up to date. In terms of restrictions on their subvention, the municipalities really need these subventions. So to stifle them for subvention is the last resort that we are heading towards, but we are working with these municipalities to have these financial statements prepared and submit to the audit office.
Chairman, we have here with us the Georgetown Mayor and City Council's treasurer, right? The one who performed the function. We have the new one and some other one.
We have the treasurer who started on the 11th of April.
That's a new one.
That's new. I'm not sure if Ms. Miller is online. We have Mr. Douglas, who acted as the treasurer during part of this period. Mr. McCalman is unable to, he was the holder of the treasurer's position during that period, but he's unable to join us.
So can I ask the one that you have here, who acted during a period of this time, if that person can at least give us an understanding as to what is the difficulty with the municipality getting their accounts up to date so as to present it for audit?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I will ask Mr. Douglas to respond.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the PAC, from what I've seen, the difficulty a lot of time has been one, assets and continuation of opening balance and balances passed down. That has been a challenge for us to bring books up to date. Also together with what the PS say in terms of capacity to some extent too.
So Chair,
go ahead.
Not only are we finding this difficulty with these municipalities, but I think the Auditor General can guide us that there is this fundamental issue that exists within NDCs also. And in terms of neighborhood democratic councils and generally local democratic organs. Is there existing financial regulations that is related directly to these LDOs, like guiding principles and so on for them?
As far as I'm aware, there is no established formats and so forth, but I believe it's the normal standard financial statement for them to be prepared. You are correct. We have found that NDC also have this capacity issue, and that is why they are also part of the training program that we have started last year and will continue this year.
But I am aware that in the year 20, if I'm not mistaken, 2016 or 2017, there were these conferences that were being held. NCLDO, National Conference on Local Democratic Organs, or something along that line. And all these were training programs, were oriented in a way for training of these officers so that they can at least do what is expected with reference to financial matters, and holding them basically, having systems in place, not structured by law, but at least common practice and so on. That was the start. But what we're recognizing now, PS, I don't know if you'll agree with me, is that there is need for stricter enshrined regulations, financial regulations, as it relates to these LDOs. Because we may want to say that one LDO is dealing with what, $5 million on subvention, and then you have grants that are also given in certain instances, and then you have the town council and municipalities getting way more. And when you multiply that by the total amount, you're talking about a lot of taxpayers' dollars there. So is the ministry looking in any direction to deal with financial regulations for these LDOs?
I believe the local organs also prescribe to the FMA Act. They follow the same financial rules and everything that governs the operation of public funds. It will also come out that through the training in building the capacity, how to prepare these financials and the individual responsibilities and the segregations, and when all of that is addressed, I believe we will have a better understanding of the need for financial statement, how to prepare it, and hopefully the objective of having these financial statements prepared in a timely manner will be achieved.
Can I ask the Auditor General or the Accountant General or the Finance Secretary to provide us, in fact, if all three can, or if they, I don't know if it will differ, but I need some guidance. The Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, the stores regulations, and all the other financial regulations that we have in place, are these organizations, these LDOs, subject to those acts or those financial regulations?
Chair, even the chair, once you using public funds for the funds, subject to the fiscal management of the act. So at least the funds coming from the consolidated fund must be subject to the same rules and regulations that governs the spending such funds.
You know, I don't know if FS is finished, but I remember there were some discussions surrounding this same matter as to whether LDOs are subject to the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, and if they are subject to the other financial regulations that exist for ministries, regions, and departments. And there was a little bit of what I would term it as, they weren't agreement then in full as to whether they're subject to these regulations. And then there was the talk about the ministry going down the road of establishing financial regulations to govern these local democratic organs. And we do know that, for example, the staff of these LDOs, they are not paid they're not on the payroll of no government entity. They are paid based on the rates that they collect, rates and taxes that they collect. And they are being facilitated primarily by the collection. That's why you find an overseer in one NDC can get 200,000 and another one in another NDC could get 40,000. And you would find the same with other staff members too. Their salaries differ. And it also takes into account the fact that some NDCs, they have commercial entities that allow them to collect large sums of tax, while some NDCs, they have absolutely nothing other than a failed Gaisuku operation, and a lot of tax are not paid, and that causes a problem with these NDCs. So I'm not sure if the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act is applicable to these LDOs, and I think we need to sort that out. But these advances, these subventions and grants that go to these LDOs, it is the ministry that has to ensure that the FMAA and the other regulations are satisfied, because it is their money, right, AG? It is their money, and your guidance will be necessary. If you can, please.
AG?
And so, whilst the AG is gathering his thoughts to answer, we do have the former PS with us, and I know he was integrally involved in this discussion about financial regulations and this whole aspect of bringing or attempting to start the process of having stricter financial regulations in place for these local democratic organs. So I would like to also hear the former PS on this matter, which I think is very, very important.
PS Magara?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just confirm you're hearing me, and thank you.
Yes, we are.
That question. The continues up to the getting office, there was indeed a challenge of related to the financial management of at the municipalities and local democratic NDCs in general, and in particular related to transfers made from central government. Probably you have, without financial regulations, which then tie them to a particular regime by law as to how they ought to conduct themselves. They are free to conduct themselves in financial matter in accordance with Chapter 2801 and Chapter 2802. And Chapter 2801 and Chapter 2802 give that authority to the councils itself, expecting or anticipating financial regulation related coming to place to further regiment the conduct in financial matters of the NDCs and all the local governments. So insofar as there's no financial regulation in place for municipalities and NDCs across the board, we have the challenges that we face here, including government agency being queried essentially year after year for them not submitting their financial statements. When you look at the act, there is no requirement in the act outside the financial regulation saying that that should be done. The relationship is directly between the organ and the AG's office, and the AG's office being authorized in the law to act on them should they be any shortfall. And so that's the situation. My understanding of when I limited office, that the situation was that you needed a financial regulation in order to bring their management up to standards that will be satisfactory for the PSC and for modern standards. And so that continues, as far as I'm aware, to be the challenge. The Fiscal Transfer Act would allow the minister or the PS to some stipulation in place how things can happen and help a little bit, but they're not. Those things are more moral suasion than binding. The financial regulations are what was needed.
But former PS, sorry, the Fiscal Transfers Act speaks primarily about a formula that is related towards the subvention. And then I think one of the other acts, or if not the same Fiscal Transfers Act, speak about the procedure relating to grants. When these transfers are made and when the formula is applied for the subvention, I think they have to meet certain criteria, and then is when the remainder goes to them, something along that line. I'm not too familiar with it off the top of my head here. But what I do know is that these transfers, after it is done, what happens thereafter in terms of accounting or providing us with a clarification upon how they spend, and if it is in keeping with financial laws. But if there's no financial regulation and they're governed by 2801 and 2802, then how do you as a ministry account for these monies that are really granted by Parliament for your spending? PS.
Is that for me?
Sorry, former PS. My apologies.
Thank you very much. That's the challenge you have. The Fiscal Transfer Act authorizes the PS to conduct, to make that transfer in a specific way. In the case of the subvention formula, and in the case of a grant, it has the discretion of the ministry in particular. And then you try to put some stipulations in place, and as in my view, is moral suasion essentially, because if a council decides to act in a certain, you have a little difficulty outside of that to hold them to pull them over the pole or hold them to conduct themselves according nature, because there's the financial regulation. There's no financial regulation that stipulates that they must do that. That's the challenge.
Thank you, PS. Former PS.
Chair, if I may, right? I just want to make a distinction between the revenue generated by the entity and monies coming from the consolidated fund. Once you're using money from that is coming from the consolidated fund, it is implied that you have to follow the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, and also the Procurement Act, which is much more clearer on this issue. According to the Procurement Act, once you use public funds, you're subject to the Procurement Act 2003.
No, but right, the question, FS, and through the chair, of course, as much as I hear you when you speak about monies coming from the consol fund, at the end of the day, yes, and I agree with you that the principal acts ought to be followed: Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, the Procurement Act, the Stores Regulations, Fiscal Transfer Act, and all the financial regulations. The point is that the collection of rates and taxes, can also be considered as public funds. And it is expected to you, and I think the issue that we have here is the non-existence of financial regulations. And that is what is causing these kind of issues that we see in paragraph 646. And you will agree with me also that because these matters date back some as far as 1996, I see here 1998, 2010, 2001, you will agree with me that they have been repeated in the Auditor General's report year after year after year. And if we don't address the issue, then it will more or less continue. So, Chair, I want to bring this discourse to a close by saying that there is clear recognition that there is need for financial regulations governing local democratic organs, neighborhood democratic councils and municipalities inclusive, so that we can attempt to fix the financial issues that exist within these LDOs. Thank you.
But Chair, before you close, just if I may,
Go ahead, sir.
I understand. I understand that there's I understand the lacuna, the gap in the law, but I think basic decency, right, require that you come to public funds. That we all have this fiduciary responsibility that to execute. We should not wait on some law.
Perhaps I should
allow the member to finish.
And so that we have to declare with responsibility here, right? Once we occupy a certain position, we should do what is right, whether the law is fair or not. And that is a message that we take out here, because those regulations may take some time, but in the interim, we don't want to be coming back to PSC to go over the same issue. And I think that is a signal that PSC should send that, look, we are all accountable to the people, right? We have certain responsibilities that we have to execute.
Mr. Chair.
That is my contribution to it. Thank you so much.
FS, in the real world, that would definitely be one in which, we would like our accounting officers to operate, but in reality, and you have been an advisor to the Public Accounts Committee for some time now, and you would understand that moral compass that gives direction that you or should give direction for persons to do things in a manner in which is expected of them. We have seen time and over again that has not been the reality of many accounting officers and other persons who would have come before the Public Accounts Committee. So I want to agree with Member Mai Paul's suggested recommendation, and I trust it's a serious recommendation, that we have measures put in place, legal measures, of which we can compel accounting officers to be responsible with the people's money, so to speak. Member Maipo, you have the floor.
Sir, I just wanted to say that the FS has a good view. It is one of high moral standing, but notwithstanding that, we have examined a number of agencies here where, for example, engineers know definitively what is it that they have to do, but we did not see them doing that. And a number of other officers know definitively what is it that they have signed on to when they took the job, but they have not been doing that. So regardless of FS' godly and good view of what is morally correct, and I must perhaps say that when we speak of one Guyana, it's all about including everyone. And that's a good moral view too. But the fact of the matter is, because we don't see the moral view being upheld, there is absolute need for financial regulations to be in place so as to fix the problem, or attempt to fix the problem that currently exists within these LDOs. They have been existing for too long. I reiterate the years that are before us, and we see dating back to as far as 1996, 2004, 1998, it is absolutely necessary for us to put financial regulations in place. And we don't want a situation when probably 10 years from now, another FS will come to us and give us a moral view again. Let us attempt to correct what is before us in an effort to not repeat same as we move Guyana forward for all. Thanks, sir.
FS, I know that your office has been doing a lot of work, so I want to dispel some of what Member Maipo put to the committee. But I believe with your expertise, and more so the expertise of the audit office and the accountants general's office, I believe the different agencies pooling their experiences together, those financial regulations can actually be birthed to help correct this mishap that seems to be a constant feature in some of these local organs that deals with the people's money. So I would rather recommend in joining member Mai Paul that serious thoughts be put into setting up some form of unit with yourself and the audit office and the accountant general office to share your wealth of experience in coming up with these regulations that could reduce these unfortunate occurrences. Member Siraj, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2018-649, paragraph 649. The Auditor General noted here, Mr. Chairman, that, and I quote, responses to audit findings contained in an interim audit report dated 31st May 2018 in relation to the special audit of the Georgetown Restoration Program executed by the Georgetown Mayor and City Council are yet to be submitted to the audit office. This would have been in 2019. Do we have an update on this special audit that was supposed to be submitted to the audit office?
Mr. Chair. Yes. So we have managed to obtain a copy of the audit report. Recently, we have shared it with the treasurer, the town clerk, and they have also asked for 2 weeks to respond to that list of findings.
Noted.
Can I inquire when the audit was received, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. AG?
The report was sent on the 31st of May 2018, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
As I indicated, I did not have a copy of this report. I've written to AG asking for a copy. However,
Do you have it now? Do you have it now?
I received a copy on the 24th of May, 2022, and I've dispatched it immediately to the town clerk and the treasurer, and they've asked for 2 weeks to respond.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may move on to paragraph 650.
Yes.
The sum of $300 million allocated in 2015 under the Ministry of Communities. This is for the Georgetown Restoration Initiatives. This amount, Mr. Chairman, you had a purchase of a vehicle, $6.2 million, debushing of Lapintier Cemetery, $52.1 million, restoration of Georgetown, $241.6 million. At 651, Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General noted that, among other things, one, that the vehicle was not accounted for in the permanent stores record of the ministry and council. If it was not recorded there, do we have any information as to where it is recorded? 651, page 270. A.
Yes, PS.
I have a copy of the registration. It is not, as rightfully stated in the audit report, it is not in the books of the local government ministry, the then Ministry of Communities, now local government. It's registered on the mayor and city council, and I will be approaching Accountant General to seek our advice whether I should put it in the Ministry of Local Government with fixed asset register and then issue it to City Hall, or if they need to do it because it is registered in their name, City Hall's name.
And in 2 weeks' time, you'll give us an update of the progress you would have.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, it's the Auditor General further noted here at B that the correctness, accuracy, and validity of the payment of $52.1 million made by the ministry to a contractor could not be verified. That's B.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I would like to ask Mr. McGarrell if he has a response for this.
Mr. Magara? Mr. Magara?
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, before Mr. Magaro comes, I would also like to indicate that we have made some checks at the ministry to locate copies of these contracts, and we have not found them up until last Friday. Our next step is to seek outside to see if we will get copies of them.
Go ahead, Mr. McGarrett.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the member for the question. I think this has to do with the Georgetown Restoration Project, correct?
Yes.
The record should reflect, and PS has before the internal auditor who worked with me on providing initial responses to these questions. The information should be accessible at the ministry. Where the transfer were made to the council, the ministry did not execute the project directly for the council, and consequently, that's what the record should be reflecting. And consequently, this comes to the problem we had earlier in discussing the financial regulation issue. So when it's dispersed to the council, then the council, based on the program the ministry may have approved to give the money, then go back to the council decision as to how they will proceed, and they will use their procurement procedure and to buy those projects. And so that is what would have transpired there. Now, I think on the I'm just going by memory here, and the information is recorded there, over $200 million being available to the council for a number of other works, a breakdown of which would have been available to the ministry before the money would have. So they will know the areas where the remaining funds would have been spent. No fund was disbursed to any NDC, including the Georgetown City Council, in bulk. It was disbursed based on a program that you would expect that they would have carried out. And so that's as much as I could remember. I can't speak to any further detail from my recollection, but all of that information would have been available at the ministry and would not have been disbursed. Well, there would have been no approval for the transfer of the fund or the check to be prepared unless we had provided the detail of projects to the AG's office for that money to be checked, to be prepared, to be transferred. So there have to be that detail at least. And then in respect of how we had a team working ministry to monitor that which was being done, but the payments on the activities were carried out by the council.
Mr. Chairman, if I may allow a follow-up. In relation to what the former PS is saying, it would be, my question is that if in making payments available, I'm guided by the former PS that some amount of documentation must have been provided to the authority at whichever level that is making these payments. But based on the findings of the Auditor General, this is pointing in the opposite direction. And I want to direct our attention to G at page 270, paragraph 651, where it states here that the expenditure totaling $182.6 million were not certified by the relevant officer. At H, the city treasurer approval was not evident on 7 payment vouchers totaling $8.3 million. At I, the Finance Committee's full approval was not evident on 21 payment vouchers totaling $30 million. I noted these in passing, Mr. Chairman, against what former PS would have said in terms of documentation being presented for payments to be made, and it's contrary to that. And at J, Mr. Chairman, it stated here there was no evidence of acknowledgement from payees for payments totaling $12.8 million. And here I would like to ask a question as to whether there is now new information as to acknowledgement from the payees for this amount totaling $12.8 million. Or who are these payees, if we have any information related to that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, All of these were queries that was addressed during the special audit that the town treasurer has requested 2 weeks to address.
I know that, Mr. Chairman. I suspect the other issues also. Well, I'm hoping that the other issues also will be addressed, namely at L, 6 payments totaling $15.7 million were made on 6 contracts that were above the limit of $1.5 million. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask a question also here in whether we have any information in relation to 12 contracts totaling $21 million awarded to one contractor, and it is stated here, contrary to the apparent stipulated maximum of 4 contracts to one contractor. I know the response from the PS, but do we know who is this contractor who was awarded 12 contracts when normally you get a maximum of 4? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'll ask the treasurer, Mr. Douglas, if he can shed some light on that. With your permission, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, PAC, I will not be able to comment. I was not employed with the Maine City Council in 2015.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Sir, I'm a little bit baffled, so I want some clarification. In 2018, in 2018, a sum of $300 million was allocated in the budget as monies for the mayor and city council. That speaks to the Georgetown Restoration Program. Am I correct, AG? With Paris 649 and 650. The same line that Comrade Siraj was focusing on there. And 6.
Mr. Chair, I think this matter was, this 300 million was for 2015, according to paragraph 650. And the 200 million was in respect of 2016.
Oh, so this is a prior year matter.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that these monies, for example, and perhaps the former PS should give us some guidance. The following is the summary of the finding where you detailed all of these findings here. These are issues that occurred within the mayor and city council and not the Ministry of Communities. Can I have some clarity on that? Am I accurate?
Through the chair, yes.
So it is the mayor and city council that received this money, and they were expected to ensure that they do what they had to do. So for example, this 12 contract totaling 21 million were awarded to one contractor contrary to the approval stipulated maximum of 4 contracts to one contractor. This is in keeping with a financial regulation, the Procurement Act, or some other practice that they have. What is it?
The actual Georgetown restoration project would have got its own stipulation.
Oh, so the project of itself had a stipulation.
Yeah.
And then you have like G, expenditure totaling 182.610 million were not certified by the relevant officer. When we were talking about the town clerk and the other financial officers of the mayor and city council.
That's a normal internal control as per section 2801 and 2802.
Thank you. So, sir, it comes back to the point we were making earlier. Rather than for me to go back to all that you have found here, we have substantial evidence from the Auditor General's report, reference to these grants and special funds and so on that is budgeted and handed to these autonomous established LDOs that require financial regulations to govern their operation. I just want to make, and I wanted to make clear that the line of questioning from Comrade Siraj was, and differentiate that it wasn't the Ministry of Communities, but rather the Mayor and City Council. Thank you.
It was well established on the very first instance.
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. At no time I gave the impression that, man, you always interpreting. So, Mr. Chairman, I will not go into further questioning as it relates to this, against the backdrop that we're hopefully will be provided with information as it relates to this particular area of expenditure within 2 weeks' time. But to say that I hope it will also include the findings of the Auditor General as it relates to paragraph 656, where it states that evidence to account for amounts totaling $70.4 million. The council did not provide evidence, rather, to account for that as it relates to the market, and also payroll costs of $30.5 million, and further, the receipt of building materials amounting to $30.5 million could not be verified. So I expect that queries as it relates to these findings in these paragraphs will be provided in 2 weeks' time. And I would support, well, I won't go there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, members. There being no additional questions, on behalf of the PSC, I want to thank the PS and our team for making an appearance to the Public Accounts Committee. And let me remind you of your obligation to provide the PSC with those information within 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to my team as well.